Welcome to Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. It is Monday. It is the 21st of October. Book club choice has been announced. I'm really looking forward to it, by the way. Our wedding anniversary is this week, and I got a lot of reading done last week, even though it didn't feel like it all week long again. But I actually did. So let's talk about that. And at the end, we're going to talk about a little bit about some planning and some general book talk. Okay, first up, the only DNF of the week. And one of my friends also finished this recently, and she finished it. I did not. I DNF'd it. That is Miss Eliza's Kitchen by Annabelle Abbs, and I read just over 100 pages in this, and I could not. The general tone, Kahlua, knock it off. The general tone of the writing is highly suggestive. So it starts off in the prose is overly flowery, like obnoxiously flowery. And I get that the author was trying to convey that the alleged protagonist is a poet, but seriously, it overly complicated sentences to convey that your protagonist is a poet doesn't make her a poet. It just makes you an obnoxious author. So there's really two protagonists. There's Eliza, and then there's Anne, who is her maid. And is her name Anne? Her name's Anne, I think. Yeah. Anne without an E. So, and Eliza is not a likable person. She really is not. She has these half-formed thoughts that she speaks out loud, and then you never hear the conclusion of said thoughts. They just occur. And then there's the whole problem on how the story is written. So Eliza Acton was, or Elizabeth Acton, I should say, is an actual historical figure. She did transform the way cookbooks were written. She did really write the first modern cookbook, as you and I would recognize a recipe to be written, ingredients, standardized measurements, and instructions. And she had a real life, and she had a real life backstory and history. And none of that is portrayed really well in the first 100 pages. I don't know about the rest of it because I couldn't be bothered. The author, I think, was really trying to reinvent the real life woman to fit the social narrative she wanted to tell. And that social narrative was the perceived way women were treated, how oppressed they were, how they really had no choices of their own, etc. ad nauseum. You know where I'm going with this. And then we get to the portrayal of Anne in those first 100 pages, and the unnecessary sexual content that served no purpose. it didn't need to be there, but it was there to titillate. It got its titillation points, and it, I'm sure, set things up further along in the book. I just didn't care to finish it. Cannot recommend it. The book opens up and it attacks Mrs. Beeton's cookbook. And I grew up with a Mrs. Beeton's cookbook that was family heirloom. And while I am sure there was plagiarism from Acton to Beeton, Beeton did change the way Acton did her recipes, and that she moved the ingredient list from the bottom of the recipe to where we all know it to be at the top. But it was unnecessary. And in real life, there was no Anne Kirby in relationship to Elizabeth Acton that my research turned up. And the whole thing was just, I do not recommend this book whatsoever. And I will not be using this as a cook from book in any vlog going forward. So, okay, enough on the bad book that will be donated to the library. What else did I read this week? So I've did 2 audiobooks. I have a return library book. I caught up on Dante. I finished A Study in Scarlet. I am a little over halfway through The Woman in White. Started The Yard. I've started another book. So there's lots to talk about. So let's all talk about the good stuff this week. Okay, audiobooks this week. I listened to 2 audiobooks from Lori Cass. They are books 4 and 5 from the Bookmobile Cat series. They are Pouncing on a Murder and Cat with a Clue. And I listened to these back to back, which I shouldn't have done, because now I can't tell you what happened in either book independently of the other. But they were disappearing from Audible Plus at the beginning of November. And I think I have 3 or 4 more books from her that are disappearing from Audible Plus at the beginning of November, which I may or may not plow through. These were just, a typical, delightful Minnie and Eddie adventure. Upper Michigan, library shenanigans, murder, books, townsfolk, the whole 9 yards. It's there. I will say one thing happens in book 5 that, while I understand it allows the series to move forward, I was disappointed that something didn't occur. I was really cheering for it to occur, and it never did, and I was very disappointed. I'm not going to tell you what, because it spoils it, but I was very disappointed. Overall, these were just what I needed to be listening to as I worked on 2025 plans, or I played some WoW, or I wrote blog posts out. And I am so thankful I found those on Audible Plus, and I just came up with a video idea for this week. So I'm probably going to listen to book 6 while I do that, so I can get the research done today and get it filmed tomorrow. This series, as you know, is one I highly recommend. They are just the perfect, cozy, set in, a small town in a state not usually set for books, Michigan, libraries, cats. little bit of romance thrown in here or there, seasonal stuff. It's all fabulous. So those are the audiobooks. Next up would be The Secrets of Wishtide by Kate Summers. This is the first book in the Letitia Rod series. I talked about this briefly last week. I have returned it to the library, and I have picked up the second book. It's in large print from my library. That is The Case of the Wandering Scholar, and I'm halfway through this one. And I know that my library only has the first two. I don't know if there are any further in this series, but these are early to mid Victorian cozy mysteries. Our heroine is the widow Mrs. Letitia Rod. She was the wife of a vicar. Her brother is the most famous criminal barrister in London, and she helps him investigate his cases. And so the first book, a young man is retained by his parents when he is charged with the murder of the woman he wanted to marry. She doesn't have the best reputation, and his parents were vehemently opposed to the marriage. And, she goes to investigate, and it is just this delightful, atmospheric read for a Victorian cozy. It doesn't step outside its bounds. It doesn't try to be overly modern. It doesn't try to overlay modern day sensibilities on 1850, England. And it is very well plotted. Like it shows you all the way through the steps. There is no telling. It is always a show me mystery. The characterization is great. The side characters are developed and well done. The mores and social values are explained without being judgmental. And especially in the first book, that was a delicate balance. I don't want to say too much because I will give it away. That was a delicate balance, especially for a modern author, but it was done very well and without trying to superimpose 21st century values on 19th century England. And I was deeply appreciative, so much that I immediately went and picked up the second book in the series to read. And I will undoubtedly finish the second book this week. I am enjoying it just as much. It is a little bit shorter, especially in the given that it's a large print version of the book, but it is just as well done. It's in a different part of England. We've advanced a year. Things are a little different, and it's just it gets the historical stuff correct. My historian brain is going, oh, wow, that's just wrong. And we all know how much I appreciate when they get the little details right, and the little details are right. So I highly recommend this series. I will undoubtedly talk about The Case of the Wandering Scholar next week. Okay, what else did I read? Let's talk about Wilkie Collins. So I am a little over halfway through. I have not sat down and made myself a book cover for the cloth bound yet. My husband's like, oh, why don't you just go put on a pair of, stitching gloves, and that should solve the problem. He was right. It did solve the problem. Fortunately, he didn't come up with that suggestion until after I had bought it on Kindle. Let's just say that I do not like, not even do not like, my enjoyment is completely gone trying to read a classic book on an electronic device. The atmosphere is gone, and the immersion is missing. And this may be unique to me, but I think I read 50 pages on the Kindle, and I set it aside, and Dave's like, "Hun, what's going on? You've got that energy again." Like, so I explained to him, and I showed him the book, and he's like, "Just go put on your stitching gloves." I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? As soon as I put on my stitching gloves, I could read the book again. My immersion is back. It all just flows. So I will finish The Woman in White this week. It is incredibly beautiful. In fact, hang on, there's a passage I want to read that was so beautifully written. Okay, this is from the Diary of Marianne. And the passage is this. It was a still, sultry, moonless night. The stars are dull and few. The trees that shut out the view on all sides look dimly black and solid in the distance, like a great wall of rock. I hear the croaking of frogs, faint and far off, and the echoes of the great clock hum in the airless calm, long after the strokes have ceased. I wonder how well Blackwater Park will look in the daytime. I don't altogether like it by night. That passage is it is so stunning and atmospheric. In just a couple of sentences, he has managed to paint a picture of the manor and the ground where she is, and how incredibly calm and eerie it is without being overly flowery and overly descriptive. It just stuck out to me as being so beautifully written. I just wanted to share that one. So I will finish The Woman in White this week. And I did finish, please note, I have not yet peeled off the sticker. I'm so proud of myself. I'm not saying it wasn't difficult. I did finish A Study in Scarlet. It is the first Sherlock Holmes story. It is the first ever I have read of Conan Doyle. I know. She who loves mysteries all of her life has never read Arthur Conan Doyle. I listened to him on old time radio. I've seen the movies and the BBC series, all of it, but I've never read the actual text. A Study in Scarlet is told in two parts, the first half and the second half, so part 1 and part 2. And I thoroughly enjoyed part 1. You get introduced to Watson and Sherlock, and it's a Watson and Sherlock introduction that is without the mythos and canon and cultural baggage that has grown up where these characters are concerned. It is just Watson and Sherlock as written by Doyle, and the beginning of their relationship, and it was fantastic. And it was like it was a clean slate for two beloved characters, and I so appreciated that. As you would expect, Sherlock is, a consulting detective for Scotland Yard. A case comes his way. He solves it, much to the amazement of Watson, who documents it all. And that's all part one of the book is. Sherlock and Watson doing a Sherlock and Watson thing. And then you get to part two. And it is a very jarring transition. You go from Victorian London, horse-drawn carriages, hustle and bustle, noise, everything that goes with that, to the arid American desert in the West, which is barren of people, and you have an old man and a young child about to die in the American desert before they are rescued by a very large wagon train. And you're like, what? Is this supposed to be here? Like, that was literally my reaction. And then you find out that the wagon train is a Mormon one, and they're going to Salt Lake City. And so this whole story develops. And at one point, I was so baffled. I set down the book. I did some research because my brain is going, why is all this Mormon stuff going on? What is Doyle trying to tell me? Doyle wasn't a Mormon. He was a Catholic. He was raised Catholic. He became a spiritualist. There is no hint of the Mormon faith in Doyle's biography whatsoever. So again, brain just trying to piece this together. Finally, it clicks. I figure out what's going on, and I then began to enjoy part two, but it took a very long time in comparison to the length of the length of part two. Do I think to the modern reader it needed to be there? No. But I did check. All of Doyle's stuff was serialized, or a large portion of it. And so was A Study in Scarlet. And if you were, reading this as a serial, in serial format, it would have made for a much more gripping and investing story. And when you realize that, you realize why it's there. And in the end, I thoroughly enjoyed A Study in Scarlet. I will continue in the big old thick book there of Sherlock stories and read him to completion, at least in that volume, which is over 1,000 pages. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I did start this week the Yard by Alex Grecian, and I was invested from the first page. I had so many other things going on. I didn't get very far. I think I'm on chapter 4 or 5. This is going to be fantastic. This is a focus for this week. I will finish it. I will finish it this week. I say that, and if I don't, I will carry it forward. And I did start A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. This is the first in the Lady Sherlock series. Again, my library only has it in large print. I read the preface, the prologue. I read the prologue, and prologue didn't grab me, so I don't know if I'm going to continue. I will try again and maybe read a chapter or 3 and see if that helps. If it does not, I can always check it out later. But I did read at least the prologue, and we shall see. Okay. That is pretty much all I read or will be reading next week. If I finish The Yard and The Woman in White and The Case of the Wandering Scholar, I will pick up Swanford Abbey by Julie Clausen and read it, even though it's Regency and not Victorian. Okay, so that is the books. Now let's do a little book chat. There was a Courtney Walsh post this week that I posted I think the post was this weekend, a very long comment to, talking about ARC reviewers, payment for ARC reviews, the whole spiel. You all know how I feel about that. If you don't, here's the synopsis. The relationship between publishers, authors, and readers has become toxic. No reviewer should ever be paid by an author or publisher for the review, because then that review is a bought and paid for thought process from the from the purchaser. And it's never going to be honest. I don't care if you're a professional reviewer or if you're, a NetGalley reviewer. If you are paid for your review, you are receiving payment and somebody expects something in compensation. As you all know, I have no problem ever giving you my fair and honest review of any book, ARC or otherwise. And I said all of this to Courtney. Reviews that are always glowing is just another form of toxic positivity. Social media is making it worse. And giving a constructive criticism review, which is something I always try to do, is not slamming the author. It is trying to point out what didn't work for you and why, so that authors can improve their craft. Now, I say this knowing full well I did a blog post this week on my blog. If you're interested, you can go read it, in which I talk about next year I'm going to start publishing my own writing. Probably not yet bold and brave enough to put it up there on Kindle Unlimited, but it'll go in the newsletter I'm thinking about doing, and it will go up on my blog on occasion. And if it's not well received, that's fine. I expect criticism. I don't expect it to be for everyone, and that's fine. And any author who only expects positivity from what they write and from the general public and praise is delusional, in my opinion. So if you want to read my full response to Courtney, it is on Instagram. Just go to the Courtney Walsh story. No, it's a post. And you can read it. Reading is supposed to be fun. It isn't a job. It isn't something that should only be engaged with positive books on review sites, because those reviews mean nothing, in my opinion, because nobody knows what the standard is. So if I review a book, it is always my honest opinion about what I read. And that's all I expect from anybody. Be it something I've written, something they've read, something they've written. It's just their honest review, their honest opinion as to what the content is. Okay, that talk is done. Coming up this week on videos, there's going to be a surprise video on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to it. I need to go do the research for it after I get this up and edited. And on Friday, I'm going to post the November pile of possibilities. On the Discord server this week, I'm going to post the are we going to do a Christmas book club read or not? I'm open to it either way. Or do you just want to start back up in January? And I think maybe I might start filming for the 12 Days of Christmas, which all of that content for me is from the 26th of December until Epiphany. So I really don't need to film this far in advance, but if I could get it under my belt and out of the way, I'd be happy about that. Okay. That's all for me. Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.